Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. I said I'd get around to doing this comparison, so here it is. Martin Fitzwater and Rafael Brandao are some of the biggest new names in bodybuilding, and currently they are some of the only guys so far to qualify for the Olympia from actually winning shows, and not being grandfathered in by being a former Mr. Olympia, or at least top 3 at last year's show. Anyway, Rafael has been around a little longer than Martin, but Rafael has only had one Olympia appearance, and that was back in 2022 where he placed 10th. Now Martin has not made his Olympia debut yet, but I do expect him to do even better than Rafael did at his debut. However, Rafael has made some improvements since his Olympia debut, and he came back to the stage this year at the Arnold Classic looking very improved, and he won the Arnold Brazil later in the year. And of course, Martin is also another greatly improved athlete. As I said, these are both phenomenal new guys. We'll be seeing both of them in the top Olympia spots for years to come, I'm sure of it. But before they even square off at their first Olympia together, let's get an early preview and do some early speculating. In today's video, I'm going to compare Rafael Brandao at the 2024 Arnold Classic against Martin Fitzwater at the 2024 New York Pro. That's really all I have to say, so let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. We definitely start out with a great pose for each competitor. Both of these guys have fantastic shape. They have big sweeping quads, small waists, and great lat width and taper. So for the silhouette department, which is my main focus in this pose, you really can't make a wrong choice. I do think Martin has the better X-frame by the numbers. His lats are a bit wider and so are the legs proportionally speaking compared to Brandao's. And with those things, I do think Martin has the slightly better angles. However, I'd be lying if I didn't say that Brandao had the more appealing aesthetics for me. There's just something about Rafael, I can't really describe it. The best I can do is to say he's statuesque. But what about in the arms? Well, that's Brandao easily. Martin is very complete, but his arms are definitely his weakest link. Rafael's arms aren't even that spectacular, but he beats Martin on size, peak, and separation. So the overall pose is close. As I said, I do like Brandao more for his aesthetics, and he has the better arms. But Martin has a tremendous X-frame, the slightly better X-frame, but to me, Brandao is just too appealing. And with the better arms, I'm giving him the pose. Now, in my scoring system for the mandatory poses, I award points based on the margin of victory. And this one I feel is very slim. I can honestly go with either one of these guys. It's 50-50 because Martin's shape is so good. Now I award 1 to 3 points, 1 being for small victories, 2 for solid victories, and 3 for blowout wins. Like I said, it's close, so for this one I'm going to give it to Brandao by just 1 point. Something similar is going to happen in the front lat spread. Martin quite literally looks like a deer in headlights, and his posing reflects that same kind of feeling. It's just awkward. He's not opening up, he's leaving arm and delt pop on the table, chest thickness there as well, and even lat and width taper. Brandao, on the other hand, again looks like a statue. This has always been one of his strongest poses. The arms, chest, and delts all have the good fullness, and his lats are pretty wide and taper nicely. He also has the advantage of just being bigger than Martin. Rafael's a few inches taller, and he has more shoulder width from the get-go. His waist is also still small, and his quads sweep out a great amount. Martin really botches this one because of the posing. Rafael is definitely taking the front lat spread. However, Martin still does look okay when you break it down body part for body part. His arms, delts, and chest still have okay thickness to them, even if he's leaving a lot on the table. His waist is also still small. Again though, with his posing it could have looked better. And Martin's legs are still fantastic. Both of these guys have some of the best quads in bodybuilding right now. Even Martin's lats themselves are okay, I suppose. Could they be a whole lot better though? Absolutely. So really, even with Martin handicapping himself here, he's still decent, which probably means he could have won the pose if he did hit it better. However, right now as it is, with Rafael being so statuesque and Martin looking awkward, he's bordering on a 3-point loss. I don't really think it's that big of a loss though, but I'm close to putting it there. So for now, it's just going to be a 2-point win for Brandao. Now on the side chest, things get turned up real quick, which is surprising. We always think of Brandao as the guy who lacks the size and thickness, but honestly he's closing in on the level of size he needs. And being a taller and wider guy goes a long way once you start filling out your frame, and he's finally doing it. He's putting up a terrific fight against Martin, and Martin is more compact and really just better built for this type of pose. In the lower body we have a close fight. Martin is a touch more separated and dry, but really neither guy has crazy details here like the extra lines in the quads or glute striations, and Rafael just bigger overall. To me, this area goes to him just by a little bit because of that. However, Martin is right there, and I could see him winning if you want that superior separation. Now upstairs in the upper limb, I'd also give Rafael the delts for being just as big as Martin but having more detail. But I turn right around and give Martin the small win in the arm for the fuller bi and try. And finally, what about the pecs? Honestly, even this is kind of close. But I would give Martin the dub here for more detail in the chest, and that far pec just juts out a little bit more. Now stepping outside of just body parts, the last thing I want to observe is both of these guys overall. overall. Who looks thicker and wider? Well, that would be Brandao. Again, he is finally filling out that huge frame, so he already had the advantage of looking wider, but now he's just bigger overall. And with all that said, I can really go either way on this one. For now, I am sticking with Martin for the 1-point win. His pecs are a bit better, and he at least has that compact look going for him. However, if these two got together on stage with Rafael's structural advantage in his height, I think he could overwhelm Martin and take this one narrowly. Even in this picture comparison, I'd say it's pretty close to 50-50. As quick as the heat was turned up in the last pose is as quick as it's turned back down here in the rear double. Now, is Martin Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, or even Derek Lunsford? No. But Brandao's back is still his weakest point. Martin has so much more pop and thickness everywhere in his back that he makes Rafael look two-dimensional. And the lower body is also another big win for Martin. Martin actually has peeled hams and glutes. Brandao may have good size in the lower body, but he is not winning with this condition. There's just no way. Only things I'd give to Rafael are the arms for the slightly better peaks, and the delts for the better separation. But that's a drop in the bucket when other than that, top to bottom, you're getting defeated soundly. So honestly, again, even though Martin's back isn't exactly the best of all time, he's still solidly beating Brandao, and Brandao can't even pick the lower body off to help. So this is going to be the first 3-point margin of the comparison. I don't think anyone out there is going with Brandao with his subpar conditioning and poor back thickness. In the second back pose, it does get a little closer, but not by much. Martin is still taking this one easily, but Brandao has one faint silver lining, that being his back width. We know Brandao is just a wider guy structurally, and if you look at his actual back, he is very wide. He doesn't have that much thickness or detail, but you can't say he isn't wide. But Martin is pretty wide himself. He's hitting this lat spread much better than he did in the front one, although I still think this needs some tweaking. But as is, his back is definitely thicker than Rafael's. Martin doesn't have a lot of detail, but look at the density of the lats and the spinal erectors. Like in the last pose, that makes Rafael's back look 2D next to Martin's. So in the back, Rafael is probably a hair wider overall than Martin just because he's taller and again, bigger structurally, but Martin's back is wide enough and he beats Rafael in other aspects, so Martin wins the back. And yet again, he wins even more decisively in the lower body. Rafael's conditioning is not even close to a place where he could even challenge Martin. Overall, with a big win on the lower body and a solid enough win in the upper body, I'm giving this to Martin. Now, I do think Brandao's back is better at doing the width thing than the detail thing, and the width thing is what I want here, and because of that, I did think about a 2-point margin. But really, who's going to have Brandao winning this one? I really don't see a single argument. So again, Martin's going to pick up a 3-point win here. Now let's go right back to a very close pose, that being the side tricep. This one is 50-50. These guys happen to be similar in certain ways because they both do similar things correctly for this pose. I'll spare breaking this one down body part for body part because it's a lot like the side chest, but I do see two key differences with these two. First, Martin's tricep is a bit bigger, and even though he's not flexing it 100% in the screenshot, we know he has great mass, shape, and even some feathering in that tricep. But Rafael has a big advantage too, being bigger but also being streamlined. Martin is thick and his waist is tight, but Rafael is just taking it to another level. He's wider than Martin, we know that by now, and we can see it again here. He's structurally bigger overall, and it looks like he's packing on more muscle, at least in this pose. Look at his full pecs, the tight waist, and the huge side leg. Again, he is huge, but he also has the aesthetics because that tight waist is in the middle. And in the side tricep, it's basically the entire focal point. Everything revolves around the midsection. And Brandao's tricep and other body parts are really good as well. But like I said, Martin is streamlined and big, but he has the better tricep. Overall, it's a coin flip, but because Rafael looks so aesthetic and is massive, I'm giving him the nod here. He just looks so much bigger and wider than Martin. This would be a 1-point decision either way though, so it's not going to be the most impactful pose, but I am going to go with my personal favorite because it's so close. Moving on to the abs and thighs, you would think this would be an easy one for Rafael to take since we always hear about his aesthetics, and a good abs and thigh shot is par for that course. But to be honest, I've never been super impressed with his abs and thigh shot. The quads are obviously terrific, but the abs are just meh. He genetically has a 4-pack, and overall he just doesn't have the best core from any standpoint. Martin has both of the elements the pose is named after. His quads are great. I desperately wish he would flex all heads of the quad when he hits the shot, but as is, he is massive, decently separated, and that teardrop has those finer details with the feathering. Overall, I can go back and forth as to whose quads are better overall. It would definitely be a good discussion, but for this post specifically, I'd go with Martin. Same thing in the abs. Martin also has a 4-pack like Rafael, but Martin's separation is much deeper, the abs pop more, and they're just better. And look at the overall conditioning difference between these two. Martin's physique is definitely a lot more clear and crisp, and Rafael's poor condition can't just be blamed on the video screenshot we're using. We saw the glutes and hams, the lower back, and even here. Rafael is just smooth and a tad watery. Martin, on the other hand, is dried and peeled throughout the front here. It's like 720p versus 4K, figuratively speaking. Brandao's conditioning is okay when you just look at him by himself, but next to that 4K screen, aka Martin looks to be in the better resolution. Martin is definitely taking the abs and thighs, but Brandao is solid in this one. Those quads are fantastic. I'm sure some people even have him winning this pose, which I can kind of see, I guess. Are the abs bad? No, just not as good as Martin's. And the quads certainly aren't bad either. However, this overall pose is certainly a clear one. So because Brandao is pretty solid in this one, I'm not going to quite make it a clean sweep for Martin, so he'll take a 2-point win here. And finally, we have the most muscular pose, which is actually a pretty close one. Martin is a guy known for his thickness, and Rafael is known for his aesthetics, but Rafael is intruding on Martin's territory here. For one, he's just a bigger human being, and when the shot is all about being massive, that helps even if you aren't exactly more muscular than your opponent. So overall, before we break it down body part for body part, Rafael measures up quite well. But then go to just the quads. I don't think Martin is looking as big here, and Brandao's are still great, so I'd actually have him taking this area for once. Then in the midsection, this is basically a repeat of the abs and thighs. Rafael is doing this pose, so the midsection really isn't a factor, but Martin chose to hit this one more upright, probably because he knows his abs are great, so he really wins this area by default. Then in the arms and delts, I would have Martin by a hair in each. This is really close though. I think it could come down to posing differences, but Martin's arms just look a little bit thicker and his delts are a little bit more separated. This is a nail biter though. I would also give the traps to Martin because he looks a bit rounder. And finally in the chest, that's going to Martin just by a hair as well. Rafael looks a little bit fuller, but Martin has a good amount of mass, but more detail. Again, this is a very close area. I think it could go either way, and honestly, I think the entire pose can. I think Martin looks pretty thick. He's probably more muscular pound for pound since he's a shorter guy, and he probably wins more body parts when you go section by section. However, Rafael is solid everywhere and looks bigger overall because he's a bigger guy overall. And on a real stage, that could be more apparent. For now, I will go with Martin for more detail and the better body parts, but this will be by a single point. Now that the mandatories are done, let's take a look at the overall physique categories. We'll look at muscularity, shape, conditioning, and flaws. And again, each gentleman will get 1 to 3 points depending on how much they win the category by. Let's start with muscularity. This category isn't just about how much muscle each guy is carrying, it's also about completeness, the balance between these muscle groups, and so on. Now, Rafael definitely has added a lot of size, and he's just bigger overall than Martin, meaning he probably weighs more on the scale. But Martin is very thickly developed for his height. He's more muscular overall compared to Brandao pound for pound. What really sold me on giving Martin this category though was his completeness. Rafael still needs a back. He lost both back poses by a lot, and Martin basically had every body part, and every body part developed to a good place at least. So it's going to be narrow, but Martin will win the muscularity category by 1 point. But let's go to the shape category so Brandao can get a win. Now both guys do actually have great shape, but to me Brandao is almost the epitome of great mass with class. Very few guys have this kind of shape in his overall aesthetic look. Martin looks more like a bodybuilder, and there's nothing wrong with that. It gets you in some areas, but not here. Still though, Martin had a small waist and a great X frame, so this isn't going to be a clean sweep for Brandao. But I'm still pushing this to a 2-point win simply because I really admire Rafael's shape personally. Could it be a 1-point win? Sure, I can concede that, but I'm throwing a little personal bias in. And in the conditioning category, this is going to simply be a 3-point win, and yeah, it's for Martin. Rafael's entire physique just lacked that extra polish. His lower back, glutes, and hams were still holding on to some fat, and a lot of areas of his physique, including the aforementioned ones, had a film of water over them. And finally, in the flaws section, I only found one that's not already covered by the other categories. It's Martin's posing. He was moving around way too much of the show and just hitting some shots poorly, like the front lat spread for example. I can guarantee he's going to be better though. I really contemplated even marking Martin down for this one at all, because what's the point if he's going to be better at the Olympia in future shows? But these videos are about one version versus another, and that has to include everything with that version, and that includes Martin's poor posing. Every time I've used this version, I've marked Martin down for this, so I'll do it here too. Martin will lose this category, but just by 1 point. Like I said, I know he's going to get better. He's already got the feedback from the judges, and I know he's already said he's going to tweak some things going into the Olympia. Now that we've gone through both rounds of this comparison, let's take a look at the scorecard. As you can see, Martin won both of these rounds. The overall physique categories were closer, but the mandatories were not. And that is the most important round. The mandatories are worth 2/3 of a competitor's final score, and the overall physique category round is worth 1/3. When you calculate these final scores, Rafael Brandao receives 33.3 points, and Martin takes the win with 66.7 points. For those unfamiliar with my scale, usually the scores fall between 30 and 60. But Martin does push the limits on what I would call a standard win. All in all, I do feel this is fairly accurate, and I think the win was fairly convincing. Martin just has it all: size, conditioning, completeness, and shape. Now Brandao does have terrific shape, and I'll admit he has better shape than Martin, but that's just not enough when Martin again has it all. What really hurt Brandao here was the lack of back and the lack of decent conditioning. Those glutes and hams look like he still had a couple weeks to go on his diet, and his back is just not where it needs to be yet. It's still definitely his weakest body part. He needs more maturity, thickness, and detail. I think if he manages to do those things very quickly, this would become a closer comparison. The judges just do seem to favor shape a little bit more now, so if Brandao can add a little more overall size, some density to that back, and bring in good conditioning, I think this could be very close actually. But as of right now, I don't see it. What does Brandao have that Martin doesn't? Not very many things. Martin is very complete, which is honestly his best attribute, and he has decent shape himself. He looks more like a bodybuilder, but he's not exactly a freaky mass monster type of guy. He still has good proportions, a great X-frame, and a small waist. He also had much better conditioning than Rafael, it wasn't even close. Overall, currently speaking, Martin is just the much better bodybuilder, and he clearly wins this comparison. That's going to do it for today's video. What did you guys think of this one? Do you have Rafael winning this one? Do you have him losing now, but maybe are predicting him to place higher come time for the Olympia this year? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments. And if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. By the way, if you guys are looking for some high quality supplements to help you on your own bodybuilding and fitness journey, well, look no further than Arms Race Nutrition. Then at checkout, be sure to use my code PROJECT10 for 10% off your entire order. That's code PROJECT10 at armsracenutrition.com. Finally, with all that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.